Since prehistory, the value of wood has been known to the human race. Because people depend on forests as a vital resource for countless products, the timber industry existed long before industrialization. It is for this reason that the survival of the vast Russian forest containing one-fifth of the world's trees and covering land the size of the 48 continental United States is a marvel. The Russian forests house and shelter both indigenous wildlife and people, including endangered animals such as the Siberian tiger and the Amur leopard. The survival of the Russian forest through the massive industrialization efforts of the 20th century can be attributed to both the admiration for the forest in Russian culture and the implementation of Joseph Stalin's forest policies during the Soviet era. If not for Stalin's 5-year plans and his preservation policies, there may be no Russian forest left today to protect. The importance of the forest to the Russian people is apparent throughout Russian literature and art. The discomfort felt by the Russian people as their forests declined between 1696 and 1914 is obvious in pieces like Anton Chekhov's Uncle Vanya, when his character Dr. Astroff wonders if when the forest died, something in the Russian people died too. Eastern Orthodoxy called for its believers not to master nature, but to revere it. This Slavic belief opposed that of the Soviet regime, who sought to master Russia's resources. Stalin's first 5-year plan, announced in 1929, called for an aggressive campaign of industrialization. New factories were built across Russia, which required enormous amounts of timber to be consumed domestically for building and fuel. Surprisingly, despite the common perception of Stalin as a transformer of nature for the sake of industry, Stalin's desire for massive industrialization actually preserved Russia's forests from the deforestation of the timber industry. Stalin was influenced to adopt an economic policy that preserved the forest by Georgy Fedorovich Morozov, who, concerned about the vanishing forests, convinced Stalin that Russia's forests were vital to maintaining hydroelectric power. It took only 6 days after Stalin's death in 1953 for forest conservation to decline. Only 11 years later, the Soviet Union saw its greatest increase in wood and timber production from 1964 to 1985, which also meant the greatest departure from environmental protection policy. Due to the decline in forest management, the illegal logging industry swiftly increased through the end of the 20th century, indicating that Stalin indeed saved the forests.